Section 8 side deals. Can we landlords do them or not? And if not, then how are we supposed to get enough rent money out of people? In this video, I am going to go where no other landlord dares to go, and I am going to get to the nitty-gritty about side deals. So let's reel up the intro and let's get started. I am Monique Burns from Detroit, Michigan. I started back in 2007 with my own rental properties. In 2008, my first tenant moved in who has Section 8, and she is still there. I am happy to report. And I have been working with 100, 200, I don't even know anymore, people that have Section 8. In 2015, we started our own property management business. We buy houses in Detroit, we renovate them ourselves, and then we sell the properties to investors all over the country and all over the world who enjoy a really good 9 to 15% return on investment. We've been tracking it, and they don't even have to buy the house themselves. We've already chosen the neighborhood, the tenant, the house, everything. I interrupt this programming. I forgot to say something very important. Right now, we are selling between 1 and 2 houses a month, and our waiting list is filling up. Check the information section below of how to get on our exclusive buyers list. My husband and I also provide consulting for people that want to buy the houses themselves. We'll go out and we will give it an investor inspection, and I help place tenants and all kinds of things. Be sure you check out my website for details on our consulting. So in this video, we're going to talk about side deals. So you might be questioning, if you're a little bit new to Section 8, I've made a whole playlist. I suggest you start with Section 8 for Dummies, and then you go to what is Section 8 really? And I am going to talk about side deals in Section 8. So what exactly even is a side deal? It's pretty much like a dirty, scary word, and you do not ever want your name associated with a side deal. They're illegal.
Can you explain what you're doing in this photo?
That's not me.
That's not you?
Nope.
And what a side deal is you the landlord, charging the tenant more rent money than what is in your HAP contract. What's a HAP contract? I'm in the process of making a video on all the paperwork that you have to do when you have Section 8 tenants. It's not that bad, really. It's all pretty self-explanatory, but be sure that you are subscribed so that you get a notification when that video comes out, so you have a better understanding of how Section 8 works. Not to bombard you with all my videos, but I did make one on the pros and cons of Section 8. So a side deal means you charge extra rent. So the tenant comes to you and they say, my voucher says I can have an $800 a month house, and you say, well, I want $1,000. And so the tenant says, that's fine, I've got this boyfriend, or I do hair, or whatever their situation is, and I can pay you that extra $200. It's really no problem. And so the lease says $800, but then you're really getting $1,000. That's considered a side deal, and there is a penalty for that. I did write up a blog all about what I'm talking about today in far greater detail, but the gist of the penalty, in my blog I tell a story of somebody who actually did get a penalty. So what the HUD laws say is that the penalty is that the landlord has to pay 3 times the amount of the claim. Oh, it doesn't stop there. Not only do they have to pay 3 times the amount of the claim of like that extra $200, they also get a fine on top of it that is between $5,500 and $11,000. In my blog, I quoted the part in this article about somebody that charged an extra $360 to their tenant over a few month period of time. They were caught, and that was considered a side deal, and they were charged, and their penalty was $33,000. Yike! Some other things, just a side note to consider before I go into what you can do if you can't do a side deal, is, Section 8 goes through all the income that a tenant has, and they say, okay, here's all your income. They have search engines that we don't have access to. They have ways of getting all this income out of the tenants, And they say, okay, if you don't want to be house poor, you need to pay 30% of your income toward rent. I like it that Section 8 determines the 30%. I made another video on how to get a Section 8 voucher, but I really recommend that landlords check out this video because it goes into all the requirements people have to go through, and it'll make you feel better, like when they say, oh, I have this extra money to pay you. But let's talk about what you can do. This is how I learned this. So I am on my local RIA board, Real Estate Investors Association. I'm at RIA of Oakland, as in Oakland County, Michigan, not Oakland, California. It was my turn to invite guests to speak to our local landlords. Now, if you're not involved in RIA, I highly recommend it. You can learn so much. So I did what serves me because I have so many Section 8 tenants being in Detroit, so I called all these different Section 8 directors, and I got this huge panel of them. I was really surprised how many showed up. Turns out it's really hard for them to find landlords who can pass an inspection, will follow the rules, that have safe housing. So they were very excited to come, hoping that they could promote Section 8. And I did. I asked them to clarify what is a side deal. And it was explained to me reluctantly that they can't prevent me from, say, having a storage business. Let's say I own a storage lot. They can't tell me that I can't charge my tenant to go rent this storage unit. So I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. So I'm going to have a story time later in the video. I'm going to tell you what I did and how it actually backfired on me, but it could have worked, and it would have been legal. So that was kind of the gist of it. And then I did more digging on the internet, and I found out that there are different ways that you can get around this. And what all these directors said is you just have to put it in the lease. It can be a lease addendum, but put in the lease fees that you're charging the tenant. They need to know all the fees because, yes, there's that 30% rule, but case by case, they can go up to 40%. And nobody would necessarily say this, but it's hard to find landlords that are good landlords. Would they maybe work with us a little bit more? Even though the fees are there, would they slide into that between 30 and 40% rule? So when you are filling out your Section 8 paperwork, when you're filling out the move packet, which is in that video I told you I'm making, so I hope you subscribed, so you can definitely get that video. But when you're filling out that paperwork, you also have to turn in a sample lease. And in your sample lease, you can have that addendum or put it in the lease. I was really surprised one time. A director told me, she said, oh yeah, I was in Florida, but I spent the entire time reading leases. And some of these people, they've got 25-page leases. I thought, oh, that's me. They actually do read them, you guys. They actually read our leases. So what can you charge them for, okay? Pet fees. You can charge her pet fees. I know I do. I never thought of it as like a side deal, and I never have looked at it as a way to get extra rent, but I definitely charge a pet fee. So you could put that in there, and you could just try it out and see if they'll accept how much of a pet fee per month you are charging this person. You can charge for lawn care, you can charge for snow removal, you can charge for internet and cable. Let's say your house already had cable. If it's an apartment, there's always the parking. You can charge for the parking. You can also charge for an outer building or a shed. Now, in my story, I'm talking about a garage, and I got frustrated recently. Some of our garages, they need paint, and when you move in, when you have a house that has Section 8, you have to pass an inspection, and a really big deal, especially if the kids are under 6, is that there can't be any chipped paint anywhere. So I had this idea, let's just keep the garages off the lease altogether. And then I found out when I first decided to do this that you can't keep the garage off the lease. The inspector is still going to inspect the garage because that's on the property, and if there's chipped paint, then that's not safe for children. So it makes sense. But so I don't think you can charge for the garage as a storage unit. I could be wrong. If you're another landlord and you've done it, please comment below. Or if you work for Section 8, please comment below what is the fine line of whether or not you can charge for a garage as a storage unit. I would still, even if nobody comments about this, I hope somebody does, I would still try it on a lease if that is something that makes sense and is fair. There's also laundry. Amazingly, in Detroit, all the tenants come with their own refrigerator, stove, washer, and dryer. Now, if I were to supply those things, I would get more money per month, but then again, I would be stuck with all the maintenance of them. I have my reasons why I really don't like to get involved in this. And it has come up so often where it is so tempting, because you know when you run your background check that they actually do have this extra income, and you need this extra income for your house. So one of the things you could do is you could look up the rental rates. I'm going to make that video too on how much can you actually charge a tenant. You might be undercharging, and the difference you need could be already right there. If you're subscribed, you'll get a notification when that one comes out. So these are my reasons. I really appreciate that they figure out that 30%. They do better than I ever could. So I'm thinking in my head, if they're paying me, let's say, a $300 per month dog fee, can they actually afford that? Likely not. Stop. One more thing. After I made the video, I got this email from my favorite director of one of the housing commissions here. And he said to me, I posed him this question. I said, okay, I really want a lot more rent than what I'm getting. So what if I did a $300 pet fee per month? What would you do? And would you use that 30 to 40% wiggle room to allow the tenant to pay that $300 a month? And his response to me was, okay, don't laugh. His response to me was, LOL, I don't know what tenants have that kind of extra money lying around. And we would talk to you about it. And he said, if you are playing the gray area that aggressively, you are sus. That's a new word for me. It's Gen X for suspect or suspicious. So don't be sus and play the gray area that hard.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
And then I want to know, where did that extra income come from? So let's say it's a boyfriend living with them and he makes a great income and they don't want to put him on their voucher, which I understand. Then they lose their voucher and they don't actually know how certain he is. I don't know how certain he is either. So I'm really hesitant on these other people that are living there to count on their income. And I'm also hesitant, like a lot of my tenants, they do hair. And I think it's great. It shows ambition. I love it. It means if they have damage in their house that they're able to come up with enough money to fix it. Let's say they quit doing hair. It's not like Section 8, when you lose your job, they adjust the voucher amount. If they quit doing hair, now suddenly they don't have that $300 a month. What am I supposed to do? Or what if it's something actually pretty egregious and you look at it and you're thinking, a search engine will find this eventually, and then the search engines that they have at the public housing agencies will find these things. And then what if my tenant loses her voucher and then here I am stuck with somebody in my house? I'm not getting rent from Section 8, and then I won't be getting rent from her, and I have to go through that whole fiasco.
I'm going to have you evicted.
I have a brain tumor.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know.
So that's another reason. And I know too, just from my experience, I don't know what the law says, but I know what my judges do in court in Detroit, at least. In Detroit, they are not there to enforce Section 8. They're not there because of side deals. They only care about rent. I'm lucky if I can get them to acknowledge a late fee. And then the judges pick their own late fee, which in Detroit happens to be $35. It's like they all got together and said, let's make our own law. The late fee is $35. So, I mean, that I have some other pet fee, let's say, on there, I don't think a judge will ever say they care about that. And then I just found this one out. So I gave more details in my blog, but in Santa Clara, if I'm saying that right, in California, they had some nonprofit group that sent out a very anonymous survey to Section 8 voucher holders. And they asked them a few different questions, and it was basically about side deals. But it wasn't just the tenants that were getting side deals. It was, who did you call to rent a house that offered that they would do a side deal with you? So that thing in Santa Clara, they were anonymously, these tenants that did all this anonymous, they were awarding them between $1,650 to $3,300 to rat on their landlords. So I told you I'd tell you my story, and she had a family, and we rented her the house for $800 a month, and it was great. We watched her kids grow up. My husband was there doing maintenance, so he saw them going from little kids to grown up, and then the grown up kids started having kids. Well, what happens when you have a tenant that long that starts with a family is they are no longer qualified for a 3-bedroom house, and so the voucher amount goes down, down, down. And Section 8 said, yeah, we will pay up to $600. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is an $800 a month house. And by this time, she practically feels like family. This is my own investment property, so I made decisions that were probably, let's be honest, I made decisions that were emotional instead of financial. I don't do that in my property management. No way. But when it was my own property, that's another good reason to get a property manager, because you protect yourself from yourself of trying to be way too generous and then getting yourself in trouble like I kind of did. So I had this brilliant idea, and I knew that I could charge for like an outer building, and this was a detached garage. So I'm thinking, okay, the garage is going to be the storage unit. And in this amount of time, my tenant ended up disabled. And so I was in contact quite a bit with her daughters because there was a struggle understanding the rental amount and did she pay or didn't she pay? And so I was working with her daughters and her son to collect the rent. And I said to them, look, I can't have her living here anymore because we cannot afford to have this house and pay the taxes and insurance and all that for only $600 a month. It is not going to work. So how about you lease out this garage and we'll put it in a contract and you rent the garage for $200 a month from me. Perfectly legal, right? I'm not even dealing with the tenant. Seems like a good idea. I couldn't get these kids to sign the lease to save myself, and I was busy at the time running my property management business, and it kept getting slid to the side. Slowly, the tenant wasn't even paying her full rent, and it got to be a disaster. And I kept calling these daughters and the son, and you guys, come on, this isn't going to work. I finally had to go to court over this. It was so sad. I saw the tenant, I was so happy to see her, and I'm like, but I'm taking her to court. And her son was there, and her son said to the judge, she's doing a side deal with this garage. Luckily, the judge didn't care about side deals. All she cared about was the $600 a month, and I had a separate lease ledger that was just for that $600 a month. So the judge ruled in my favor, but we did end up having to get a bailiff, and it turned out that garage was packed. So they really should have paid for that rental of that garage for how many dumpsters it took us to clean out that whole house after a decade of being the best landlords to them. But we did get good money up until the end there, and I'm not turned off to Section 8. I could have done better as a landlord. As soon as her amounts went down, you know, the whole coulda, woulda, shoulda. I do want to say, though, that I believe in good. You know, I think landlords, we just want what's fair to us, and I think tenants just want a safe and reasonable house. And I think the Section 8 caseworkers, they just want good landlords. So we all just need to get along and be upfront and do things the right way. So thank you so much for watching. Be sure you check out my whole playlist, Secrets of Section 8 Revealed, and check out Investing in Detroit if that is something you're interested in. I've got videos about that. Here's my most recent upload, and this is how you can subscribe. Thanks again for watching.